fear is one thing, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
They're fearful of where they are, and very often in business we find ourselves, we have a thermostat, a natural thermostat, don't we?
Yeah.
And it's typically set to comfort.
Yes.
So if we are comfortable in the situation we find ourselves with life and with work,
Mm-hmm.
then we deny that opportunity. We say, actually, I don't need that. I don't need the hassle. I don't need the worry.
Warning: Damian Andrews' growing revenue and profit, if implemented, will put more money in your pocket. Please use with caution.
Welcome to Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit with international speaker and revenue and growth specialist, Damian Andrews. This is your source for practical, usable, and simple action steps that you can do every day to put more money in your pocket. And now, the host of Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit, Damian Andrews.
And the crowd cheers wildly to the trumpeting blasts of elephants sliding through eyes of needles. This is Damian Andrews' Growing Revenue and Profit, the program that deals with all things that puts more cash in your pocket. This is the show that handles your revenue riddles, profit puzzles, operational oddities, and culture conundrums. I am the one, the only Damian Andrews, and on today's show is the amazing and wonderful Jason Cannon. Now, Jason has run, scaled, and sold profitable businesses, which taught him much about life. And he's climbed the corporate ladder with almost zero qualifications, and he has a competitive desire to succeed. Now, Jason has extensive experience in management and project implementation, business development and strategy, increasing revenue and profitability, analysing market trends, and formulating business strategies to exceed sales targets. Plus, he has a fascination of hypnotherapy, NLP, and psychology. And he's here to raise the standard in business. Jason, pleasure to have you on the show.
Well, it's lovely. It's lovely to speak to you, Damien. I'm privileged. I'm honoured. What a marvelous opportunity to talk to you and help your audience, which is my goal today.
Fantastic. And that's what we are here to do, to help the audience. Normally I dive in and get really, really serious here, but what I want to do is take a slightly different slant on this, because you've studied hypnosis and I know a little bit about hypnosis. And I noticed in there your aim is to exceed target sales or sales targets. Can you use hypnosis to exceed target sales?
That's a really good question. I've not considered that before. The thing about hypnosis, Damien, as you well know, is that you can't make somebody do something they don't want to do.
That's true.
I learned that many years ago with a client who wanted to quit smoking. Actually, it wasn't him that wanted to quit; it was his wife that wanted him to quit. So, whilst it had limited success over a few weeks, he was back on the cigarettes after a couple of months. So yeah, I'd use hypnotic suggestion and language with the business owner potentially, and I'd sort of delve into, why do they do what they do? Why do they choose to do what they do? And I'd play some of that language back to them. So, you do this, when you present a show, it's for that audience, isn't it? So depending on the audience, you manage their expectation and you play the right language to the right audience.
Yes,
that is very true in hypnosis, and it's also very true in business. So know your audience. I was actually talking about this morning, about the whole communication model, about how we see the world, and we're bombarded with millions of bits of data. And we distort that data, we delete some of it based on our and based on values and culture.
Yeah.
So what I think I've told you isn't necessarily what you've heard.
Yes.
If I said to you and somebody else, have a look out the window, Damien, what do you see? You would give me some different things.
Yeah.
So we learn that in one of the sort of foundations of NLP is the communications model. So neuro-linguistic programming, communication at a higher level. Are you familiar with NLP, Damien?
Yeah, I'm a train the trainer type person, and I did that a long time ago. And I can actually walk and touch my head and belly at the same time as saying it. So
Well, I definitely can't do that. I'm one of my things. I think you read it out there is about being competitive. I like winning. I like people that I coach and I train to win. But winning doesn't have to define us, does it? You and I spoke earlier about Wimbledon.
Yeah.
And about those, the guys and girls that turn up with this whole entourage of people, and you think this is one person hitting a ball. Hang on, is this necessary? And so I'm always fascinated, with the level of coaching and who else they brought into their team. And so I'm always curious, what works for different people. Whether it's coaching, whether it's training. But it's all about that person's how they see the world. Yeah, there's this, there's this expression. I don't know if you've heard it. The map is not the territory.
It's certainly not.
Have you heard that expression?
Yeah, well, I was in the military as well many, many, many years ago, and you can look at a map all you want, and it doesn't mean that's what the landscape is going to be like. You've got to get out there and do it. So
yeah. So one of my kind of watchwords is assumption. So don't make assumptions.
Yeah.
Because we do that. We have certain biases that we're wired with, don't we?
Definitely.
We all have them. So if we make an assumption, but then if you have that word at the forefront of your mind, why I'm making that assumption, is that assumption real? Have I imagined it? And again, this is how you see the world.
Yeah.
So very often when I'm coaching a business owner or a business person, I've got to work really hard in myself. My natural way of doing things, I'm a fixer. I'm a fixer of people. My dominant question or my dominant statement in my head, if I'm talking to a client or anybody, is how can I fix them? How can I make this better for them? How can I make this easier for them? So I understand that dominant question and statement. And so I'll try and take assumption out of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's a skill in itself. And very often we're not careful with our word, with the words that we use, the people that we talk to. We make assumptions, which is dangerous.
Yeah.
We take things personally, which is also dangerous. And winning is good, but I would say doing your best is better.
I like that.
If you tackle it,
go ahead.
If you tackle a task, then knowing that you've done your very best when you reflect on the day or you reflect on a situation, have I done my very best? And if the answer is no, well, what could I have done better? What could I have done differently?
So in that time, in the moment as well, when we go, we've done our very best, we can always look back in hindsight and go, oh, I could have done that better. In the moment, we've generally done the best that we could in that moment with the circumstance that we had. What I want to come to from the business point of view as well, so a business owner and with the assumptions that they have, from a lot of businesses that I've worked with, certainly, there's a lot of things that they could do differently, but they don't do it differently, even though when you explain it to them and they get it logically, consciously, and you know the difference between conscious knowledge and unconscious action. How is it that you reach people to get to that point where they get it and go, actually, I need to change here, I need to do something different?
You have to let them self-discover, Damien. You know, because it's a you have to sell it versus telling it. Because you know we human beings don't like to be told what to do. we would rather we
know how
discover
it is.
that. Yeah.
Well, ask me at 18, I knew everything.
Yeah. Ultimate confidence when you're that age, and as we get older, we tend to lose some of that confidence, don't we? You know, so to answer that question, I'll start with the foundation of that person, and it's important for me to get to understand that person and how they think. And so I'll take it back to basics, and I'll say to them, look, we need to get the foundation right before we start off and talking about your goals and your aspirations and your vision for your business. So very simplistically, just starting with the values, the words that they see value in, and exploring that, and then adding some perspective. I know that that's a word that we like using, and I love using the word perspective. Is how do you believe other people see you? So these are words that you value. Tell me why you value them and what those words mean to you. The person then articulates that value word, and then they might give you 10 or 12 words, and I'll say, okay, and who else that knows you really, really well? What other values will they say you have? Because sometimes we're bashful, or we need that different perspective, perhaps a helicopter view or a second person view to say, give me somebody that knows you really, really well, and what would they say about you? What would they say that you value? And that perspective is sometimes really, really powerful. So I'll start them with that. It's a value conversation. You and I spoke earlier about sort of, asking those 4 questions about, should I start a business? Because that's where it starts, isn't it? Should I start this business? Why should I start this business? Well, if you can say, well, am I good at it? Yes. Do I love it? Yes. Do the public need it? Yes or no? Can I make a profit from it? Then, if the answer to those 4 questions is yes, okay, you might need some money for that. Should you use your money, or should you use other people's money?
Well, it depends on how good you are at selling people to give you money.
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll start it in that way, and that gets them to explore themselves. It gets them to explore, and regardless of whether they're 20, 30, 40, 50, or whatever age, most people haven't been through that exercise, in my experience. So that's a really good way of me understanding them, but more importantly, them understanding themselves. If there's a genuine business opportunity, then we work. It's a process, isn't it? Yeah,
because that's what I wonder when I think about business and dealing with business. Because to me, it doesn't seem all that difficult. And Confucius said, life is very simple. We just insist on complicating it. And if you're looking at a business, what you're doing, as you mentioned, is there a problem that needs to be solved? And can you make a profit out of it? So is there a sustainable, profitable market? But in reality, you go, is there a problem to be solved? Can I let people know about it? Marketing. Can I convince people that they can trust me to deliver it? Selling. Can I deliver it? Operations. And then from that component, will I follow up and ask for referrals? To me, that's a very simple process. What do you think makes it hard for people to actually to deliver that? And why do people find going into business so difficult?
I think there's a number of reasons. Fear is one thing, isn't it? They're fearful of where they are, and very often in business we find ourselves. We have a thermostat, a natural thermostat, don't we?
Yeah.
And it's typically set to comfort.
Yes.
So if we are comfortable in the situation we find ourselves with life and with work, then we deny that opportunity. We say, actually, I don't need that. I don't need the hassle. I don't need the worry. I'm quite happy where I am, because people don't like change.
Yeah.
So fear of the unknown gets in the way of us starting a business, or we don't have the right people around us. Yeah. We don't have a Damien or a Jason. We don't have someone we can call, a mentor, a coach. If we don't surround ourselves with the right people, then when an opportunity presents itself, we will find lots of reasons why we shouldn't do it versus the reasons we should do it. And I say this to clients: don't focus on what you don't want. You can't focus on what you don't want.
Sounds obvious when you say it like that, though.
But yeah. So focus on what you do want, and can you use your imagination to take yourself to that place where you are already the successful entrepreneur? You already have the successful business. How do you now feel in that state? How do you now feel in the future where you've trusted in yourself, you've taken a leap of faith, and you've challenged yourself to change because you see an opportunity? Why are you doing what you do? Why? Who else is involved in this conversation? So who do you love? Who are you doing this for? Is it for completely selfish reasons? Is it just about you? And when you explore that with people, you find that it's generally not.
Yeah.
It's about kids, or it's about parents. It's about wanting to have the best opportunity for those kids, or the best retirement or future for their loved ones, for their spouses, partners. So if you can tap into that helps them understand that they're going to need to go through some pain and some change. They're going to need to turn that thermostat up to somewhere that's a little bit scary. Is there a fine line between fear and excitement?
Yeah, definitely.
It's recognizing that. It's recognizing that, isn't it? When you get on the roller coaster, that feeling you have is a similar feeling to, I'm starting a new business. Hang on a minute. Should I do that?
Yeah.
How do you feel when you've come off the roller coaster? You tend to feel pretty amazing, don't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. As a sportsman myself, having competed in a few triathlons, having sprinted for a local club, having played football at a reasonably good level, soccer, football at a reasonably good level, we have the apprehension about, am I going to win? Am I going to lose? Who am I going to let down? Am I going to let myself down, other people down? But I can recollect the great feeling I have at the end of completing that triathlon, that run, that soccer match, that football match. And then I tap into that. So that's my preferred future in business. You can stay exactly where you are now. You can procrastinate And you can say, well, I haven't chosen the color for my website yet. I haven't chosen my business cards. I need to do this, it's really important to me. And you can deny yourself that positive future.
Mm.
And so if you asked a person a great question, who else are you denying a perfect future or a positive future, Damien?
Mm.
Is that going to take them down the road of, no, do you know what? I am going to embrace this change. I'm going to embrace this opportunity. As long as I have I have someone that's going to help me with that accountability, remind me of my motivation, my goal,
mm-hmm.
and that's going to help me with all those processes to get me to my goal a bit more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Then what are we fearful of? What are we scared of?
So from that perspective, because from what I've seen, and I love that you've gone right into the psychology component here of the business owner, because all the businesses that I've worked with, both worked with as clients, but also been involved in where they were struggling, it was the handbrake being the CEO or the owner that was holding it back. How is that your experience as well?
Most definitely, yeah. I think that very often the bigger the organization, the more levels of management you have to get to that top tier where you can actually influence the direction of the business. Can it pivot? Can it accept? Can it change? Can it shift? And the answer generally is that the bigger the business, the longer it takes to shift.
Yes, definitely.
Because the CEO, the MD, the business owner, the smaller the business, the quicker they can pivot, the quicker they can adapt to change, an economic change, a market change, a client need change. Whereas the bigger the business, and we've seen this with big businesses in the past, just go pop, haven't we?
Yes.
Massive corporations that have made billions of dollars, and they go pop because they don't recognize the change. By the time they've realized, it's too late.
Yeah.
Because they have to go through too many processes and too many people to make those changes. So by the time they've realized, it's too late. And they're typically just in denial, aren't they?
Yeah. So from that,
we've always done what we've done. So why would we need to change?
Yeah. And with that, there are key actions that we can do which have more productivity than the others. You mentioned about a website, and a lot of times people can be, I'm going to use the word fluffing around, I've got to get this right, 100% right. And I know one of the CEOs here from it's carsales.com.au, which is the biggest online car sales website in Australia. When they started that business, the CEO said he's a friend of he's a friend of one of my friends, but he was telling him that when they started, he said, we were 20% ready for the market in real reality. But what we did is we took it out to the market and we got the feedback from the market, then we could adapt it and adjust it. He said, if we had got 100% ready, what we would have taken to the market probably wouldn't have been what they wanted. How, so what are the key things that people need to focus on in their business? Because when we talk about that, whether you're starting the business or whether you're operating it, there's key things that you need to be constantly testing in the market. What are those key things?
Well, I think fundamentally our clients, our customers, getting regular feedback from those customers and clients. Take the last 5 clients you had, the last 5 businesses you worked with. Why did you choose to work with us? What was it about us that was different? What was it about us that you liked? And then amplify that. Very often you ask a business, where do your leads come from? And they say, oh, lots of sources. Okay, well, be specific with me. Where do they come from?
Yeah.
And very often they can't tell you.
Yes.
So it's about understanding what the client wants, and iterating your processes that play back into what the client needs and wants. and so listening to the client, but also listening to, testing the temperature of your team in the office, testing because your team in an office is the biggest resource that you very often use.
Yes.
So test them. How are you? What are we good at? Give me one or two things that we're brilliant at. Give me something that you've realised that we're not very good at. What's taking up too much of your time, and what's not taking up enough of your time? And that they will give you that data back.
Yeah.
How much is that? Attack it from both.
Yeah, I was going to say, how much of that is ego as well? You mentioned ego before. From that perspective of being able to accept that feedback from the customer and from your employees.
I think it's about who you hire. When I ran a business where I had multiple, 15 people working with me, they worked with me, not for me. That was always my attitude. There was two rules if I employed somebody, Damien. Number one, will they fit in with the team? And number two, are they smarter than me? Because I wanted people that were smarter than me.
Yeah.
Because, and I was very happy to train them how I wanted something done, but then to say to them regularly every month, what are you noticing? Are you taking notes about what you're doing on a daily basis? Are you taking notes about what your colleagues and team members are doing? What are you noticing? What are you hearing? What are you sensing? And how would that impact your job? And how does that help the business? And how does it help your customer? How does it help our clients? So it's continually checking. The expression, if nothing changes, well, nothing's going to change.
Yes.
Very, very, very simple, isn't it? Very simple. So, ego does get in the way. I know best. I've started this business. I've taken the risk. Why would I listen to anybody else? Well, because the world changes, the market changes, the customer need changes. Going back to just stepping off the curb, we've known how car manufacturers have produced cars for the last 60, 70 years. They bring a car out that's kind of 95% ready, and they then bring out updates. They software updates or recalls of things that don't work as well as, and they're relying on their customer to do that, aren't they?
Yes.
That's what Apple do. It's what Samsung do. It's what Microsoft do. Yeah, you buy the PC, you buy the laptop, you buy the mobile phone. Well, guess what? A week after you've started it, there's an update, isn't there? It's a software update.
Yeah.
There's a change because they listen to the customer. They get the feedback on the product. They realize it doesn't do 100% of the things that the customer wants it to do because those things change. So they adapt and they pivot and change quickly. Do we do that in business enough?
How do we do that, though? What systems can we implement to be able to take that one, to gather the feedback in the first place, and then take that and move that forward? I've seen that with a number of businesses where they'll hire somebody to come in and do a consultative report, and one I saw took 8 months to do. Blew my mind. Yep. And then they delivered the report, and then it sat on a shelf, and they paid a fortune for that. How does a company actually, what systems can they put in place to do that? Because I don't think that whole consultative report works. And from your psychology background and NLP and hypnotherapy, to make a change happen, it's got to be repetitive behaviors. You can't do something once and go have a meeting. Okay, here's the report. Let's all do this. And everyone walks out. And even if you do a rah-rah session, they might be all pumped up, but 2 days later, they're back to doing things the way they were. How does a company implement systems that actually work? What can they do?
Well, there's a number of things you can do depending on the business you're working with. So, for example, you could introduce a model that's based on a number of contacts with a client and a number of contacts with a member of staff. When a member of staff first starts, you take them through an onboarding process. How often do you how often do you speak to them? What model do you use to stay in contact with Damien when Damien starts in that business, to check that he's happy, fulfilled, he feels valued as a member of the team, he's growing, he's learning, he's embracing the culture of the business. So you have touch points. So some businesses would work on a 1-3-7-30, 1-3-7-10-30-90. So, day 1, you have contact. Day 3, you have contact. Day 7, day 10. So you introduce that model, and that system stays in place for their first 90 days, the first 180 days. We do monthly reviews with people, but when they need the support the most is typically at the front end of that journey, isn't it?
Yes.
So you follow a model which is driven by a simple calendar. And that ensures that you are properly connected. You don't lose that connection with your staff and your clients. I was talking to a business owner this morning about, what model are you using to get the maximum opportunity out of the client base that you already have. Yeah. And he said, well, what do you mean? I don't really follow a model. So I said to him, if you follow a model that helps you stay tight to that person, I'm not just talking about sending them an email once a month with some value on it about what's happening in business, what's happening in that business space, but actually having a conversation. Yeah. Do you do that once a year? Your dentist will contact you every 6 months. They'll send you a text and they'll say, Damien, you need to come in for a checkup.
Yeah.
You go every 6 months or you go every 12 months. Do businesses do that? Do they do that enough? Are they transactional, or is their business a relationship-based business? So
you mentioned the relationship word. Yeah, sorry, continue on.
Yeah. So if they don't have that process, introduce a simple, well, just add one thing. Just add an anniversary conversation with each member, each client. How difficult is that to implement? Yeah, we can do that. Yeah. When that client is in the chair, that's an opportunity for you to upsell to that client, isn't it?
Definitely. Yeah.
But what we do is in business, we don't do enough of that. And what we also don't do is we don't, when we have an interaction with a client, what's the purpose of that interaction? Well, it's to make the client feel special, but it's also because we want to make some money out of the client. Yeah, let's be frank here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, are you a McDonald's and you ask one more question?
Yes, we know what that question is.
We know
the highest margin. I think it's one of the highest margin offerings they've got.
Yeah, and then what did they do? They introduced another question.
Yeah.
And that added another 20 billion. So we don't operate. That's a model, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a simple model. So why don't we do that in business? We connect with, when we make the effort to connect with a client, why don't we then ask for something? Who else do you know that would benefit from this service? Who else do you know that would benefit from a conversation with myself? We don't do that enough. So does that answer the question? Does that help?
It certainly does from that perspective, because the R word they use there, relationships. Building relationships, a lot of times, if they focus on getting that sale and that's done, and then they don't think of it exactly what you just said. Whereas if they've bought from you once, even if it's a long product, you might be selling caravans, for example. I don't know why I thought of that. Maybe I just hate them being on the road and slowing me down. But there's still, other people they might know, they might upgrade at some point. It's a long lead time, obviously. But yeah, I find from what I've seen, businesses don't have any, minimal, if any, one, follow-up procedure, and two, even less, having a referral-seeking procedure. And to me, given the amount of money that you go and spend in getting a client, you would want to be maximizing that. To me, that seems a logical way to go, which comes back to what we were talking about before at the very start. Is that business difficult or hard? Well, certainly hard if you're not doing the key things that make it easier for you. And from that perspective, what is, some ways that you can do that? Having that staying in contact is as simple as, sending a card out every month or so, or an email, or what works really well?
Yeah, I think different things work. We're all, first and foremost, we're all human beings.
Mm-hmm.
We all have a desire to be understood.
Mm-hmm.
We like to be, we like to be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And as a business, I would like to, I'll switch that and say, well, be interested in your clients. Be interested in what they do for work. What do their values align with your business values, and how can you tap into that? And I think we're not client focused enough. Hopefully businesses understand that money is just the outcome of doing a great job for our clients, isn't it?
Yeah, you add value, you solve a problem, add value, and make them feel great, and they'll keep coming back.
Of course they will. Yeah. I work with quite a few new businesses, and I sort of say to them, you need to play on that new boy, new girl, because everyone loves the new girl at school when they start. Everyone's interested in you. Where have you been? Where do you come from? Where are you living? Everyone kind of clusters around them and is interested in them, aren't they? And so when you start that business, you have that honeymoon period where you are the new boy or new girl, and people want you to do well. But you've got to tell them not just what you do, you've got to tell them why you do it.
Why you do it. Is that you're talking about the impact that you're making from doing what you're doing?
Yeah, or it could just be as simple as, I'm doing what I do because I love helping people, or I'm doing what I do because I want to send my kids to college, through college or university. There's nothing wrong with being real in that situation. People will tap into that, won't they? But I think sometimes people just talk about what they do. Simon Sinek talks about it far better than I do. He says, stop talking about what you do, start talking about why you do it. It goes back to the whole values thing, doesn't it? Yeah. And definitely. Are we working just for the sake of working, or are we working because we want to do something that we enjoy, that we love, that we're passionate about, that we're good at? I see so many people that are just stuck in the job. I talked to someone last week. He's 59. He's retiring next year. He's worked to retire. He can't wait to retire. He hasn't enjoyed his job for 40 years. I mean, that's not great, is it?
No, it sucks.
It's not great. We have this big thing in the UK, and I don't know where you have it in Australia. The big resignation conversation, that people are, they're not happy in their jobs. There's a report recently that came out about real estate agents in the UK. 91% of them are unhappy in their job.
Yeah, I work in real estate. I can understand why they're unhappy. So, a long time ago. But from that perspective of employees, I mean, the demographics of the world are shifting. And people are surprised why, I'm not sure, because we knew the baby boomers were going to retire. It's not like they suddenly aged and all retired. That was always coming. And now we have... So before that, when I look at my dad, for example, and his work experience at that time when he was working, he worked for the same organization his entire life. There was security in that, and there was so many employees out there that the businesses could then, demand and they could fire people and hire someone new. That's probably why the trade unions became so prevalent, because it swung too far of businesses taking advantage. That might not be politically correct, but whatever. But that was that swing that we went through, and now we're going the other way where there isn't the workforce there, the demographics. There isn't a workforce to sustain what needs to be there. So as an organization, we've got to create a culture that if we're going to attract top talent, we've got to create a culture that's going to attract that top talent. What are things businesses can do to actually operate in a more effective manner so that they can attract that top talent, create a culture that's really important, really compelling?
I think they've got to, in simple terms, they've got to spend more of their time talking about what it is that employee wants.
Mm-hmm.
What do they want from a job? What do they want from an opportunity? Stop talking about KPIs and numbers and this is what we want as a business. Start being interested in the employee and say, what do you want from this job? We know that, number one for the vast majority of the younger generation is they want personal development, Damien. Number one isn't money. Number one is they want to be developed. They want the opportunity to grow as a person. They want to learn things. I wouldn't have dreamt of that when I first started work, and neither would my father. But now there is that desire to grow, to learn. It costs a lot of money to rehire that same person, probably 20% of their salary. It's a lot of money, isn't it? It is, those businesses that have a staff attrition problem, they need to switch their focus from what the business wants to what those individuals. If you've given them the opportunity because you see that they can do that job, spend time regularly with them, talking about them and what they want. And we're scared about coaching them, training them to be the best version of themselves in that role because we think, well, they're just going to go off and work somewhere else. Well, if you don't, the next business they go to will, and they will get the benefit of the increased sales, the happy staff. And I always say to businesses, look, the chances are they might be there for 2 years, they might be there for 3 years. What your outcome you want from that member of your team is to do a great job whilst they're there, and if they leave, you want them to say great things about your business. You want to be an advocate for your business. You don't want them to leave and then the next week on Glassdoor they're just saying, well, don't work for Damien, doesn't know what he's talking about, don't work for Jason, he's only interested in himself. You want them to be a great advocate for business. So when the next person says, why should I go and work in that organization? Present employees say it's a great place to work, but past employees say the same thing.
Does it have to be so? Because I think a lot of businesses don't want to do that because they see it as an expense. And this is something I'm really fascinated about because obviously from a financial balance sheet perspective, you don't own the employee, so they don't go on the asset side of things. But the reality is they are an asset, even though you don't own them. And that's where if you invest in that asset, that then gives you a return. But I also wonder about it from the perspective of how you deliver that growth and development, because at the end of the day, you don't want an employee coming in and doing whatever it is willy-nilly, because they won't be doing things consistently with how you operate. And you mentioned McDonald's before. McDonald's has a system and everything is delivered in the same way. So if you're training the employees anyway, it shouldn't be difficult. Well, I don't think it is difficult to bolt on with that training an element of growth for them as well, and a feedback process. Am I misunderstanding something there, or is that something you can expand on?
No, I think we see it in some businesses. I don't want to big up Google too much, but we know that if you go and work at Google, 20% of your weekly working week, do whatever you want, work on a project. So you have that flexibility and freedom, which is what we crave, isn't it? Yes, we know that the outcome the business wants sometimes requires you to do the consistent things again and again and again. It's process driven, it's consistent, it can be very boring. But if you have an escape from that, if 20% of your week is fun, then you're gonna stick around for the other 80%, and actually you're going to be more engaged in the 80% because the reward is that 20% where you can do those things.
Yeah.
So why not recognize that? Yeah, we've seen that with productivity with remote working. Productivity hasn't dropped because more people work remotely. They're not in the office with someone looking over their shoulder and going, "What are you doing in the next 10 minutes, the next hour, the next day?" They get stuff done because they want to feel valued, and they want that. They genuinely want to work in that business and for that business to be successful. The vast majority, you'd always have those that try and beat the system. That's not going to change.
Yes, but they're the minority. I agree with you. A lot of people actually do want to do a good job, and if you give them the right environment to do a good job, they will do a good job.
Yeah.
And
from that, I can give you an example. So I work with a business that had that had an attrition rate of less than 2%. And I went and spent some time. I went and spent some time with them because I wanted to see this for myself. And from the moment I drove into the car park, got out of the car, everyone was friendly. Hello, didn't know who I was.
Yeah,
I was just some Joe getting in the car.
Yeah.
The greeting when I came in, so the atmosphere and the vibe, and so they didn't just say this is a great place to work. It wasn't just we have a fantastic culture. The actions that they took demonstrated that. So they had a nice canteen. You got breakfast if you wanted it. You got lunch if you wanted it. They had a pub at the end of the office. They had a tree house. They had a football team. They had a netball team. They had they put on little productions in their pub. Little plays and things. But the focus was on having fun, and work was just work was that was the reward for working hard. And so they
go ahead.
No, go on.
I was going to say from that perspective as well, when we're looking at this having fun, because we know psychology, from a psychological perspective, and I know they didn't know this when these movies come out. I'm a bit of a pop culture reference person. But back in the 1930s, I think it was, when Walt Disney created Snow White, and when Snow White and the birds and animals are cleaning the house, they're singing Whistle While You Work. And then again, later on, it was repeated. Well, that philosophy was repeated in Mary Poppins, where she said, in every job that must be done, there's an element of fun. Find the fun, the job's a game. And I know from some of the work that I've done in my time, it's been mind-numbingly boring if I wanted it to be. There was one where I was a lot younger, and I was temping, and I went and they had a data dump from a spreadsheet. A data dump into a spreadsheet, and the columns didn't line up, or like all the rows, the columns didn't line up. So we had to go through tens of thousands of items and check what it was and line all this up. Now, as you can, just talking about it, you just go, oh my God, that's just so boring. There was, I think, 10 people employed for 3 weeks to do this. But I decided to gamify it and go, well, if I sort it this way, can I do that? And made it into a game, and it became a bit of fun. And then people came and they were coming and asking me, how are you doing this? And I think people were going, what's wrong with you? Because you're enjoying yourself. But is that part of that component as well from the culture, is that the work, if we have that attitude of, in every job that must be done, there's an element of fun, we can actually create a different culture around stuff that can be mind-numbingly boring. I've taught accounting classes where people walked away and went, that was amazing.
Yeah. I think there's two parts to that. I agree with you about having fun. That's really, really important. But I think it's also finding people doing things well. And I think businesses are good at finding you doing things wrong. That's not good enough, Damien. I didn't like the way you did that. I didn't like the way you handled that call. What they're not very good at is finding you doing that well and saying, that was brilliant. I love that. Let's just share that with someone else, how you had that conversation, how you closed that client, or how you helped that client. It makes you feel amazing because they've seen that, they've witnessed that.
Yeah.
So not necessarily, fun is great, but actually praise is, and a pat on the back is just as important. Not enough of that goes on in business. That'd be my perspective on it. And interesting, you talked about, so gamification is something that I'm by no means an expert. You've come across gamification?
Yeah, I have a whole
How
bunch
it
of
works?
programs that I've developed, and systems.
Yeah, and I love that. I absolutely love that. I think that's genius. And I think businesses, so where you have a repetitive job, like a call center, typically a call center's, huge staff attrition, it's like a building with no windows in it. And, you get timed out to go to the toilet, and it's a tough place to
1984
work.
by the
Yeah,
sounds of it.
it's a tough place to work, and no bugger
A
wants to work there because
cubicle.
it's tough. Cubicle free. Here's
Exactly.
2 sheets. Here's 2 sheets of paper, Damien. Um, so yeah, gamification in those situations where you get rewarded for a streak. You've just taken 20 calls in an hour. You've just converted X. Give them a badge. Give them a reward for that. I know that sounds very simplistic, but if you're working in that environment that is really tough and is really tense and is very KPI numbers driven and is very time driven, well, gamification makes it more fun, doesn't it? Makes it
100%.
more interesting. So, but do big businesses do that? I don't know if they do enough.
And this is the point where I'm getting to from that perspective of the whole dynamic of the workforce has changed because of the demographic shift. And there are some businesses that are embracing it. Others are fighting. I know we've got 4 big banks here. I'm not going to mention them, but I know from one of the banks, they've now bit the bullet and said, okay, no more trying to get people back in the office. We're going to have a flexible space. The other one is still going, no, everyone must come into the office, and they're trying to still force people back, and struggling, and it's affecting how that culture is operating. But that gamification side of things, and there's 3 components. It's micro learnings, social learnings, and gamifications, which is a core of what I focus on. Because as you know, from a learning perspective, implementing a change that, if you sit people down for a whole day session, they're not going to absorb all of that, and they're not going to take it in.
No.
But if you do little micro learnings and then do it so that the people are interacting with each other, so they're actioning it, and do it in a fun way, all of a sudden this just integrates really quickly, and that change happens really, really fast. And that's where, from that perspective of, the demographic side of things, how organizations can actually now, it's a requirement. If you don't, you're going to fall behind. There just isn't the workforce there anymore. And from that side of things, when we're looking at creating that culture, what other things do you think businesses need to focus on to create that culture that is attractive for people to want to come into and stay with the organization?
I think they need to pick their leaders, and that they need to be real leaders, not managers. So they,
What's a real
by
leader?
examples is, well, someone who shows you what to do versus tells you what to do, talks to you about the benefits of doing it well, and does it in a fun way. I was talking about bullying in the workplace with somebody yesterday, and I was saying that it's still a massive problem. It still goes on. When you put pressure on somebody, they find it easier to put that pressure down to the next person versus acting like an umbrella to protect them from above, from that pressure from above. And one of the things that I think one of the reports I read recently was talking about what staff want from their boss. And one of the things that came out was they want a boss that cares. Again, sounds very simple, doesn't it?
Well, I always wonder when I read these studies and research, did we really need the research to know that people want to be cared about?
I know. Yeah. One of my things, Damien, is simplicity, and I try and live my life by simplicity. We overcomplicate things, don't we? We try and, yes, change can be complex.
Mm-hmm.
Starting a business can be complex, but actually, it's relatively simple. Is there a need? Can I do it? Yeah. Have I got some money? Yeah, I'll borrow some money. Yeah. So let's not overcomplicate it. So culture in a business, it. I see this a lot with businesses. They've got this fancy thing written on the back of a wall, and when you say to the business, do you have a mission statement? Do you have what's the goal? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to achieve? I think Amazon have got this. They talk about, they have one thing, which is the amount of open tickets, and that's the one thing they focus on as a business. So we try and keep that ticket number to a small number. Sounds very easy. It's simple, isn't it? Very, very big business, very complex business, but they have one thing. We spoke about
know
McDonald's,
what that one thing should be. I mean, Amazon just keep the ticket numbers low. That, again, easy thing to do. But is there any way to choose that? Obviously, it's going to vary from business to business. But how do you go through the process of identifying that?
That's a great question. It's going to vary, isn't it? But even if you just understand that we need one thing, then you're more likely to find that one thing. So if you don't know it, you're not going to look for it.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. So say to your organization, again, we talked about the size of big business and the fact they can't pivot and change quickly. So you just ask the staff, what's the one thing? What's the one measure? And it could be as simple as how staff feel on that day. 0 to 10. Feeling, I feel zinged, I feel amazing. To 0, I feel crap, I don't feel valued. So testing the temperature of the staff every day. They walk in and they just write a number. They press a button and they write a number. And then you get a score every day.
Yeah.
And the CEO, the boss, whoever it is, the leader, can then say, well, we're at 50 today, Damien. What should we do to get it to 60? What can we do to get it to 99? What did we do the day before when they came in? It was 100 or it was 90 or whatever. Yeah. So that's a process, isn't it? Again, sorry to I'll keep bringing up the process, but it's we like boundaries. We like routines. We thrive with routines, and we thrive with rules, don't we? Business, sport wouldn't exist without rules. Businesses don't exist without rules.
Well, they tried to change that by taking scoring out of sports, but it didn't work. It just
yeah, it's rubbish, isn't it?
Well, is it that component as well? Because you mentioned about the appreciation and asking the staff. And I know from organisations that I've worked with, I have a part of it, or part of the exceptional effort program they have is a continuous improvement module. And one of the things we do with that is we bring, I have very creative in the name, have a continuous improvement meeting. And it happens once a week. And one thing I mandate is it starts on time and finishes on time. There is no excuse. On that minute, it will start, and on that minute, it'll finish. And it's to set a precedent of, okay, your time is valuable, because how many times do you see meetings starting low and just dragging on and not be focused? But the purpose of that is to draw out of the staff things that can be valuable, because you've mentioned them before. The staff have all this knowledge, and then from that we draw out that knowledge and then implement it, so they're involved in that implementation just from that one half an hour a week meeting, and massive change happens. What are other things that can do to draw that knowledge out of the staff to use that? Because you're already paying them anyway. It just seems a waste if you're not drawing that knowledge out. And they're doing the stuff, they know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, so we've spoken about lots of things, and we've talked about models. We talked about systems and processes. So a really easy model that a business can follow, ESP, effort, success, progress. So when you have your morning huddle with your team, talk about, let's start the day off in the right fashion, and you can do this on Zoom, you can do this on Teams, you Google, you don't have to be face to face. So, real world stuff. Tell me one thing that you gave 100% effort to yesterday. Go around the room. Everyone talks about something they gave 100% effort to. Give me one thing that was a success for you yesterday, a win, a signed client, a deal that went through, a great phone call, whatever it is. You decide, you're the person that measures your own success. The boss, the leaders taking this conversation. Now give me something that that works towards your progress. You're reading a book, you've read an article, you've saved something to listen to at the weekend. Maybe a great podcast, Damien. Hey ho, yeah, that's your progress. Yeah. If you know of any, let's talk about it. And then finish with, you've got to send 2 messages: text message, email, WhatsApp. One of them is a gratitude text or a gratitude message. Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity to be on your podcast yesterday. Loved it, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Gratitude back from me to you. Yeah. And the second one is perhaps a prospect, a person, somebody you've not spoken to for, you've overlooked them, you've ignored them maybe 6 months, a year, and then send them a message. Damien, sorry I've not been in contact. Let's have a reconnection. We had a great conversation 6 months ago. When are you up for a chat? So really simple model. Takes half an hour every day, sets your day up. That tests the temperature of the team. It tests the temperature of the business. It gives you some feedback. It gives you an opportunity to praise your team, to reward them for their effort, their success, and their progress. And they, in turn, sending out messages. Ultimately, some of those are going to be business messages. So it's a form of lead generation for your business. So yeah, that's a nice little model from me to you, Damien.
I love that.
And your audience.
And foretelling the future. That's awesome. I'm going to have to. I was too busy listening to you. I wasn't taking notes, but I'm recording this, so I'm pretty set. With that as well, when we're talking about how we reward people, and I love that you mentioned about appreciation, because I have a military background, and I notice from the corporate environment, it's generally it rewards an individual effort, and sometimes at the expense of other people. And that's how the corporate reward system works. But I know from my time in the military, one of the things we had to do, I was posted, and you'll know the SAS, I was posted to the Australian SAS. And doing the confidence course, they had what's called the confidence course. And a lot of your quote unquote jocks, I was doing talking marks for those just listening. Got to cater to everybody.
Absolutely.
But the one thing was noticed was that the people that your typical jocks would often fail that course, because the way it was designed to work was you could not succeed, you could not make it to the end unless you worked as a team. You couldn't get over certain obstacles unless you worked together. And I know from the military, all the military medals are awarded to people that actually sacrificed themselves, not necessarily, died, but they were at sacrifice to help others. Do we need that shift in corporate?
Well, I think the simple answer is yes, of course we do. But I think it's also down to personalities, isn't it? You know from your time in the military, and I know from my time in, independent and corporate life, that you come across different people with different skills. And some people do things for themselves, some people do things for the business, and some do things for the greater good of other people. So, you might have been the guy at the bottom, going over the 3-meter wall. You might have been the first guy that pushes the first person up, but you got there first because you wanted to be that guy. And so it's about having, you don't want all of the same people. You want different personalities. and we said earlier, didn't we, about, rule number one, if you hire somebody, are they going to fit in with the team? You different personalities, different traits, different skills, of course, but you want there to be some kind of alignment in that. You don't want a maverick. You don't want a person who just does everything on their own, doesn't see the benefit of teamwork. And maybe those that believe that they know it all and they don't need anybody else, maybe you take them to an assault course and you say, right, how are we going to get over this wall?
Yes.
So you put real challenges in their way, and they have no choice but to understand. Initially, they might not like it, but eventually they realize, actually, whilst I could try this on my own, I'm going to be far more successful and far happier. And after all, we are tribal, aren't we? Us humans are tribal. We like being part of a group. We like being part of a tribe. And that won't change. That's animalistic in us, isn't it?
Is it tapping into that ego as well with some of those people where, from that perspective, you're switching the ego fulfillment that they need to, rather than getting the reward, they're still getting the reward, but they're getting the reward because they're working as a team and helping other people succeed as well.
Yeah. And what you would do in that situation is you would say, if I was that person, if I was egotistical and I wasn't really playing ball and I wasn't part of the team, you wouldn't necessarily just call me out on that. You would say to me, you'd use we language. You would say, we need you, the team needs you. So I'd play into that ego. I'd play up to that ego. So we need you. Yeah. And over time, that's going to switch. Or, as probably happened in your situation, what happens to those that their ego is bigger than the team's?
Well, they either become part of the team or they disappear.
Exactly, because
you refer them to your competition.
Exactly. When there's the battle, who do you push to the front? But you do, that's collectively we win together, and when we suffer, we suffer together.
Yeah.
Because if we suffer together, we suffer less, and that's no different. So your military experience teaches you that. My experience, playing in a team and working in a team for the benefit of the team, is very different from me doing something individually. And it's understanding that actually the team won't tolerate that. Eventually, the team will kick that person out if that person doesn't perform. And so I see a lot of similarities with business there.
I love that. We've talked for a while. If we're going to sum this up, what would you want the listeners to take away? The people that are starting a business or that have a business, they might be a senior manager within a business. What would be the key thing that you would want them to take away as to how to grow their revenue and profit?
I would say two things. I would say, you used the word ego. I'd say get yourself out of the way of your success, and let other people help you with that, because you won't find a shortage of people, whether they're a business coach like myself or a mentor or somebody. There's so much online, isn't there now? YouTube, podcasts, LinkedIn. There's so much out there. If you want to help people, will help you. So get out of your own way. Yeah. And going back to the Roger Federer conversation, follow the model for excellence. If you want to be a football player, the best, if you want to, so if you want to be Mbappe, or you want to be Roger Federer, or you want to be a Stephen Bartlett, or you want to be a Damien Andrews, or you want to be a Jason Cannon, follow a model, a success model. And that model is built on processes. Understand the different parts of the processes, the start, the middle, and the end, and get your foundation right, understand where you're going, but understand that actually the goal doesn't define you. Because when you turn up at Wimbledon to win, the winning, winning's it doesn't separate, does it? It's because you all want to win, but what separates you are your processes that you follow to improve gradually. Yeah. So small. I think James Clear talks about it, really well. It's those 1% improvements. So if you don't analyze your processes, and you don't iterate those processes and improve them through feedback from your staff and from your customers, if you don't improve that process, you're not going to get nearer to your winning Wimbledon, to your having that successful business, to scaling that business. And that's how you scale that business, is you break it down into what we do, why we do it, and each of the different processes that make up that business, and then seek to improve. Where's the gap? What can I improve? Does that answer that
definitely.
question?
That's awesome from that perspective. You covered so much there for that one thing. There's a lot there to actually to digest and pull apart. So Jason, I really appreciate you taking the time to be on the show today. How do people reach out to you if they find listening to this, they've connected with you? What's the best way to reach you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Jason Cannon at Cannon Performance Coaching, or you can find me on Instagram, Jason M. Cannon. But yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best place to follow me. Or I'll share Damien's got my number, so always happy to have discovery conversation with a business owner, someone who's stuck or someone who wants to start a business. That's what I love. That's what I enjoy. Everyone should have access to a coach, Damien. You know that. I know that. And so, yeah. Is that my McDonald's question? Is that my one more thing?
Do you want fries with that? I love it.
Do you want to go large, Damien? You want to go large?
Exactly. We certainly will. We're definitely putting your details in there. Certainly, definitely. I make up language. I say English is my second language and I don't have a first one. But from that perspective, we will have your details in the show notes so people can reach out to you and connect with you as well. If you've connected with Jason and like to learn more, certainly reach out to him. He's stated he'd be more than happy to help. Jason, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been wonderful and it's been an enjoyable chat. I've loved it a lot.
Oh, thanks for the opportunity. No, I've really enjoyed it as well. And thanks for being a great host.